Hi, my name's Dave Flynn, and welcome to part 2 of my bass collection, looking at the Hohner B2 series headless bass guitar. Now, in part 1 we had a look at the whole background behind the Hohner instrument and its connection to Steinberger. So I'm not going to go back over that now. If you want to go back and have a look at that, have a look at part 1, and I'll give you a bit of an idea of that. And we talked a little bit about the construction of the instrument as well. Suffice to say here, though, in part 2, the Steinberger was built as a one-piece graphite designed body and neck, as opposed to the Hohner, which is an all-maple design. And I suppose what's one of the problems that sort of comes up when people start sort of talking about the Hohner and the Steinberger. It's very hard to expect that the Hohner is going to get the same kind of sound as the Steinberger of the old. That's the graphite designed Steinberger. So you're not going to get those cold, clinical, very pure tones that you would get from the Steinberger instrument, because it was that graphite body and those EMG pickups combined that was the thing that really gave it that unique tone. But besides that, the Hohner in itself has its own tone and has its own uniqueness, and that's why it's still liked by many players. And some players even prefer the wood tone as opposed to that graphite or man-made sort of synthetic kind of tone that I suppose the Steinberger was. In terms of electronics, well, it really varied depending upon when and where you bought your instrument at the time. The very first Hohners, we're talking about the sort of 1984, probably going around to 1982 within that kind of period. There were basically only particularly two models that you could get. There was the B2, like this one, and there was the B2A. Now the B2 was an all passive instrument, and basically just had two humbugging pickups and the typical 2-volume, 1-tone control kind of system. Pretty basic. The very first of these, as far as I can find out, and bear in mind there's very little information that you can find on these Hohner instruments, but from what I can tell, the very first passive instruments actually did have EMG select pickups in them, but they were very quickly replaced with Hohner's own brand of pickup, which is the same as the ones that I've got in here as well. So if you've got a passive instrument, then you'll probably, with EMG selects, then you'll probably find that yours would be probably one of the very first of them. The other one, though, is the B2A, which was an active version of the instrument. It is probably more like the Steinberger L series that it was modelled from. Now the B2A actually did come with EMG select pickups, which were kind of a lower end version of EMG's stock pickups that they were putting into their Steinberger basses at the time. And I guess a bit like if you have a look at my Hohner review, it was a bit of, I suppose, Steinberger's way of saying, or EMG's way of saying, that they were actually made in Japan or made in Korea or something along those kind of lines. So it was a bit of a lower end pickup, but it was still quite good pickups in themselves. The terms of the controls, well, it actually had 2-volume, and instead of a tone control, it actually had a stack knob, which was a stacked bass and treble, which was a cut and boost kind of arrangement. And it also has a toggle switch, which I can't recall from memory, but I think it's actually up here somewhere, and a little light. But basically sits there so you can turn the actives on and off, which was kind of a nice feature, and the light basically told you when that was on and off, and it was kind of a little funky little thing that looked good in low light in itself. The tonal variation between in the cut and boost was actually quite a good amount of cut and boost within that that active arrangement. So it was kind of good. And if you're looking at a second-hand version at the moment, my money would be on the B2A, simply because it does have those EMG pickups and does have those does have that active cut and boost arrangement. If you've got a passive version like the one that I have, then certainly you could get a similar kind of sound, or a similar kind of arrangement to the active system by just going through some kind of effects board with some kind of amp or tuning, like amp simulation or preamp kind of arrangement. In terms of the sound, though, it's quite funky in its own way, and it's quite punchy. Even with this passive instrument, if I was to kind of like just play on the back pickup here, or on the bridge pickup, you'll kind of get a sense of that. And even on the back pickup, it's still got quite enough bass that it's still quite a punchy kind of sound, and it does work in a live situation. It does kind of work quite well. So it's really good in that respect. If you play it up on the neck pickup, you'll certainly get more of the wood, which you'd kind of typically expect from the instrument. And it's a little bit more beefier in the bottom end. And it's quite good in that respect as well. It's quite good for slapping as well. Probably the passive instrument probably doesn't quite have the same balance that you'd probably get from the active one, but in terms of slap pop. But if you have a look at it. So it's kind of good in that respect as well. Both pickups together is probably more, is kind of a blend of both of those, and you probably find yourself just sort of rocking back off the neck pickup a little bit, and just playing with both pickups, but with both pickups together. So it's quite good in that respect. And it's good in that respect as well. It's kind of good as well. It's a great instrument if you're looking for something that's light, but it's not heavy like a precision bass or something like that you want to wear around your neck for long periods of time. I know people in the 80s who were looking at the Steinbergers were all looking at it because it was a lighter instrument and they had back problems and sort of things like that. It was great for that kind of thing. But it's kind of quite a nice, it's just quite a nice feel to it, and a little bit like, I suppose, if you look at my Hohner review, it's kind of got that sort of feel about it, because it is a small body, but this is actually a full-scale instrument. So you've kind of got the best of both of that. The other great thing is, if you have a look at the PV behind me here, this is no difference in size to that guitar. So it actually fits into the same guitar bag. So you could fit it into an electric guitar gig bag quite neatly, and it's great for just carrying around as a travel bass. It's brilliant for that kind of thing. And if you want to travel light, it's great, because you can just stick it in the back of the car and with your rig, and works really well. In a live situation, the sound, I kind of think of the sound as kind of a bit of a dark, kind of broody kind of sound depending upon your arrangement, you may find that you might have got a little bit from that. You may find that it's a little bit mid-heavy in terms of the tone, and that's probably more from the fact that it is a maple body, and just the fact that lack of mass that it actually has. But that may work in your favour as well, because some of those mids are really good for cutting through in a band situation. I like using it in a band situation because it does fit quite neatly behind the bass drum, and you kind of get a nice little blend there as well. I don't probably like it as much for slapping in a live situation, only for the passive instrument. I just don't think it quite has that balance. But as I said, the actives you might find that a little bit better. It also works okay for tapping as well, if I sort of do a bit of that sort of thing. Again, if you've got the active though, you've got a bit more control over that, and you can sort of boost some of that sort of treble and get more of that tactile response from the instrument. But in terms of kind of like the neck, it is quite good, and if you can find a good one, then you'll be on a winner in terms of that as well. My final things about this instrument: it's a great instrument. It's kind of light, and it is kind of good to play. And I like it just because of its small body, and because it is light. It is really good in that respect, and because it is that unique body design, which even when you think about this is 30 years old, is still attracts a lot of attention, and people still kind of find it an interesting instrument. And I guess that's partly seen by the fact that they are hard to get, and those people who have got them don't want to part with them unless they're trying to make rent or bail or something along those kind of lines. If you are, Hohner still do make the instrument today, so there are variations on it. You can get now, there is still a B2A. There's a B25 version now, so there's a 5-string version of this instrument. And there's also what they call a B2B, which is kind of like an updated version of this instrument, I guess, which has, instead of having these passive humbucking pickups, it actually has a PJ pickup arrangement, which probably sounds good, but just to me it'll look it's just not there. And if there was an uncool wall for basses, I think I would be sticking it on the uncool wall for the reason that it just doesn't look kind of like it fits in with the whole Steinberger thing. I said in part 1 that this had more similarities to the Steinberger of now than of the 80s, and partly that's because if you think about the Steinberger Spirit or the Synapse instruments, both very good instruments in their own rights. They're wooden instruments, and they're both maple, same construction design as this. Even more interestingly is they're both made in the same factory as this instrument in Korea, alongside the Hohner instrument. And that's really surprising, considering that the original idea of the Hohner was to be a kind of a licensed version of their American counterparts. This now is that kind of change around, and they're both being produced side by side. If you do have the Steinberger, you probably have got the slightly better instrument, more in fact because of the pickups being put into it and the active circuitry alongside of that. Other than that, there isn't a lot of difference. And for my money, if you were looking at the Hohner of now and the Hohner and some of these older ones like this B2, I would think in terms of construction and design and build quality, these older ones are probably better than the ones of now. So I would probably give this probably about a 9 out of 10 in terms of its build quality and construction. Well, look, that's my review of this instrument. Hope that really helps you in terms of if you're looking at them. Bear in mind that there's not a lot of information about the Hohner out there, and any information that you need if you're looking for the instrument tends to come from blogs or wiki or one of those kinds of things. Hohner itself has no information about the instrument. If you've got an older one and you're trying to look for any kind of serial numbering and dating from any serial number, well, good luck with that, because there is no information, as far as I can tell, out there in regards to all of that. If you are looking for the serial number, it is stamped on the back of the access plate here, not that white label, by the way, but it is stamped in there. You can't see it too well here, but it is actually there as well. But some have them, some don't, and that's kind of the whole mystique of the Hohner, and still why it is still reviewed today. It's one of those things, you either like the Steinberger sound or you like the wood tone. It's up to you. Check it out for yourself. I would check it out with your own rig. That's probably one of the things that I would say before you go off and buy one. Make sure that you can play it with something that resembles your own sound, so you're not sort of picking it up and then bringing it back and thinking it doesn't quite work with my own thing, or it doesn't sound the way I was thinking it was going to be. Use it with your own system first if you can. Okay, thanks a lot for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Check out my review on the Hohner violin bass. My review on the Roland GR77 is coming up soon as well, so keep an eye out for those. Thanks a lot, thanks for watching, and I will see you soon. Cheers.